Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and our mission is to bring you the real news with all of the content we release throughout the week. And that includes really incredible stories as told through the eyes of our field messengers. That includes in-depth news where you may have seen the headline somewhere else, but the team and I go into more in-depth about what that story is actually about, include some sound bites, and then we also have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency on what's really happening here on our planet in the ultimate battle of good versus evil. Now, I don't know if you've been feeling it, but one of the reasons that today's episode, I usually release it on Saturday. And today's episode, I held off an extra day because I am feeling some crazy symptoms, and perhaps you guys are too. I know some people in our chat are talking about this, about the Schumann resonance, and probably for the last, 3+ days, I have been having crazy symptoms off the chart. And I thought, well, I'll hold off another day, maybe by Sunday, because these aren't the best symptoms. It's like achiness, and there's a ton of ringing in my one ear. And I know major things are happening behind the scenes. And so I thought, well, I'll give it till Sunday. But yeah, it's still here. So I'll be fine. But this is definitely an interesting episode to do, kind of just because I know there's so much happening behind the scenes. And so we don't have a new report from Kim. So Kim from the Global Intelligence Agency, she was trying to get out a report on Friday. I can tell you from behind the scenes that a lot of the production work has been done for that specific video, but there must be something blocking it. And, despite our best intentions, we're being attacked from a lot of different angles right now. So I'm sure that will come out as soon as it possibly can. But if you want the latest and greatest information of everything we put out there, feel free to visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. This podcast is a week in review show. So I go through our top stories that we've released throughout the week and kind of give you just a little synopsis of what we discussed. Of course, we encourage you guys to actually watch all the videos we release as well, but it's a great way to catch up on stories you may have missed, or if you would like to share UNN with other people, we encourage that as well. The way UNN works is we don't do regular advertising, okay? We do sell some of our own products. For example, we sell some supplements and essential oils, and we will run little commercials on the news for the products that we control and that we know what goes in them. But other than that, we don't work with regular advertisers. So we rely on either money sold from our own products or our memberships, right? And that's how you guys can support us. So if you aren't already a member, which gives you instant access to all of the content we release the moment we release it, please consider joining. Again, more information is on our website. Otherwise, you can always get our information about a week after it's released. We do upload it to YouTube and Rumble. But as you guys know, we can't always control what happens. Episodes of The Rundown, I can tell you, are supposed to automatically post the moment I post them on YouTube, and somehow, miraculously, almost every single week, they get marked private instead of public, and that is not the setting. So there is definitely some funky stuff going on that we don't necessarily have control over. So to get that direct line to all of our content, you definitely want to become a member. With any content that you're checking out online, that you're reading, that you're watching, that you're listening to, we always encourage you guys to think critically. Think about the information, ask questions. Does this even make sense? Does this resonate with me and how, for example, right now, my body is feeling? I don't necessarily need Kim to release a report to tell me there's some major stuff going on right now and that I need to hold the light as much as I can. Today, I'm planning to be out in the natural sun as much as I can. I'm going to do some grounding, right? It's up to all of us to come together. We know that we are in the throes of things. We know that we are at the end of this battle. And yes, we all wish this thing would have wrapped up, a long time ago. But we're here now. And I really do believe we're at the end of this. Just these crazy symptoms and stuff I'm experiencing. And I'm sure you guys are too. So let's end this thing on a high note. Let's think positive thoughts. Let's do our grounding. Let's really be in the moment. and not stress about all the craziness around us, right? Really connect with source this week. I just feel like this is like the grand finale kind of thing. Okay, so before we start with the stories, I wanted to share some experiences with you guys. See, you guys listen to the rundown, so you get the more like laid back Sunny that gets to tell stories. Like pretend we're sitting around a campfire. Sunny's going to tell you some stories about Source and what Source is doing right now, at least in my life, because I believe this is happening all over the planet. And sometimes we take things for granted. And sometimes we're just like, nothing's changing. But I'm telling you, our whole world is changing right now. So I want to encourage you with a couple of stories. The first is a little bit scary of a story. It involves myself and my family. So we went to an amusement park. All these stories, guys, just happened in the last few days. So when I say stuff is happening quickly, it really is. So I think one of a parent's worst fears is losing their child, right? And I mean like physically, like I can't find my child. And we were at this really big amusement park. And my daughters, we were there with some friends. My daughters went off with one of their friends and they said, hey, we're going to go to this petting zoo. We want to see the animals. And we were wrapping up eating lunch. And I said, okay, that's fine. We'll come get you the moment we're done with lunch. And so it probably was only about 10 minutes later, we're done with lunch and we go to the petting zoo and my daughters are not there. Their friend is not there. And I started to freak out a little bit. My husband was definitely freaking out. So my husband's like, let's split up. And we were there with some other friends. And so everybody kind of split up and we had our cell phones on us. By the way, my girls do have cell phones, but they didn't have their phones on them because we were riding roller coasters and, we didn't want the phones to get damaged. So I told them to leave them in the car. So, we had no way of contacting them. Now, to be honest, guys, my mind was going 1,000 miles an hour, and I immediately went to all the negative things that could have happened to my kids, right? And it was really hard to shake that. But I also knew at the same time that there was no police officer, no safety person, like no one in the park would be able to biolocate my children better than me. Specifically me, even my husband. I have got a very strong bond with my daughters, my twin girls. And I had to turn inward. I had to let go of all the noise and my crazy head that was telling me they were kidnapped. And, I never know what's going to happen, you guys. I have been on vacations, and I don't talk about this a lot, but I've been on vacations where I've run into operatives. Okay, so this is like a very real thing. And I know on some level I'm tracked. I know they listen to my phone calls. Like, this isn't crazy conspiracy talk. Like, this is my real life, as is for a lot of people that work at UNN. And so that's always in the back of my head. Like, are they so desperate that they would try to do something crazy like this? And so when I couldn't find my girls, I'm starting to freak out. But then I also know deep inside that I can find them. I have everything I need in order to know exactly where they are. I just have to turn inside. And I've got to quiet this crazy head of mine that is going 1,000 miles per hour. And so I did my best. I'm not going to say it was easy because, again, just the 3D moment of it all was really getting to me. But I did. I turned inward. I focused on my girls. I thought of my girls. I thought of the love that I had for my girls. And I started to walk. And I'm walking through the park from the direction where we came because I didn't think they would turn back and go the other way. And I'm walking through the park and I'm looking at different rides and little rest areas and things like that. All the stuff they have at amusement parks. And I'm focusing on an individual area and I'm sensing for their energy, basically. And I'm like, is there energy there? No, their energy isn't there. Is there energy there? And I didn't have to go very far before it came upon this ride. And you couldn't see the line for the ride. It just kind of disappeared like into these lines and, buildings and stuff like that. But I could sense their energy on this ride. And it wasn't too far from this petting zoo. So it kind of made sense logically too. And I thought, they've been here. I don't know if they're here, but they've been here because it was like an energetic blueprint of them. And obviously, I wasn't using my regular eyes to see this. This was more of a feeling, right? So I could feel them because I knew they were at the petting zoo too. So I could feel them there and I could feel them at this ride. And so I knew, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay between these two rides and I'm going to basically walk back and forth until I can find them. And so long story short, probably about 10, 15 minutes of doing that, I see my daughters come out of a bathroom that's right outside of this ride where I can sense them. And they're drying off. It happened to be a water ride, whatever. So they went into the bathroom to kind of dry off. And I was able to locate them. Meanwhile, everyone else is freaking out and they're trying to reach out to police officers. And I knew all along I had that ability, but I had to quiet my head. And I'm not saying I did things perfectly. And, it was just kind of crazy in the moment. But I was also able to locate them very quickly and to ease not only my mind, but the mind of the other people that were there with us, because there was another little girl that was with the group. We were all kind of freaking out. So I wanted to share that with you because we do have these incredible abilities. And sometimes we have to tune out what our 3D brain is telling us, because especially, the bond between a mother or father and their child is just so strong. And so I just had complete faith that I could do this. And I think so much of our ability is just us believing that we have these abilities. And I just knew with my girls, I'm like, I know these girls, I can find them. And I did. Okay, so that's my first story. My second story didn't happen to me. It happened to my husband. And the reason I wanted to share this story with you guys is because he's not awake and aware. I know a lot of you guys, you feel a little lost sometimes or a little frustrated because your family members aren't aware that, you're even listening to content like this or believe certain things. Sometimes I feel like I have a double life with the stuff we do at UNN because I don't tell a ton of people about it. I'm starting to say it more and more. And my husband knows what I do and he's seen some content. So he has an idea, but he's still not awake and aware. So for him, he was out here. You guys know I'm traveling right now. We're hanging out with friends and family for the summer. And my husband and my boys came out about a week ago and they have a much shorter vacation, but they were out here for about 8 days. And so while he was out here, he was trying to get together with some old friends from high school because we grew up in this area. And he was trying really hard to make this happen. But we had so many things planned because they were only here for a week. And it just wasn't happening. And there's this one friend in particular, probably his closest friend, he was trying to spend some time with. And his friend was traveling and he wasn't getting in until the day my husband was leaving. And they're trying to work this out. And it just wasn't happening. And my husband told me the night before he left, he's like, I didn't get to see any of my friends. Like he was a little bummed out about this. But he had the intention, right, of wanting to get together with his friends, and in particular, this one friend. So believe it or not, he calls me from the airport. And as it turns out, his friend's flight, and they had not talked about this prior, but his friend's flight was landing like an hour or so before his flight was leaving the same airport. And it was a tiny little airport that isn't used all that often in this area. I usually go to I'm in northeastern Ohio. So I usually go to like Cleveland Airport or something like this. But this is a small airport. And I guess they didn't even talk about, what airports they were flying out of or whatever. But they got to spend some time together before my husband had to catch his flight. And some people may look at this and just say, oh, what a coincidence. Guys, that's not coincidence. That is your intention manifesting itself. And what I'm encouraged by is that this is happening with people that are not awake and aware. So even though my husband doesn't know, a lot about manifestation, I don't think he's ever said that word out loud. But he did still have an intention, a really strong intention to visit with his friend, and he couldn't make it happen. And even when we just don't see how things are going to happen in the natural, we're trying so hard, and this is falling through, and this is falling through. It's a gentle reminder to us that sometimes you have to let go and let God, right? Because this is how the universe is supposed to happen. We're not supposed to stress about this stuff. We're supposed to put our intention out there and watch it in awe as it naturally happens. and then be astonished by it because I was so excited that he got to see his friend. Anyway, I wanted to share both of those stories with you because it is sometimes challenging, especially if you're tuning into mainstream media and all the crap that's on social media, to see these changes happening. But it's happening for people like you and me that are awake and aware, and it's happening for people that would never even attribute it to that. They would just think it's coincidence, right? So I hope those stories empower you this week. I know it took up a little bit of time to talk about this, but I really thought it was worth it. All right, now let's get to those stories. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Okay, so let's brag on our awesome field messengers. You guys, this is what UNN is all about. People like you reporting on what's happening in your communities. We believe this is how you break down all of those crazy narratives that they want us to believe. Why don't we just start talking to each other? Why do we have to have official reporters or anchors or whatever giving us the news? Why can't we just talk about things that are happening in our community and eliminate all of this crazy talk of, things that are trying to pit us against each other? Oh, this country is really like this. Oh, this happens in this country. We don't need their narratives anymore. We don't want their narratives. We never needed it, but they thought we needed it. And all of this structure behind it is starting to fall apart. So if you want to contribute and be part of the solution of tearing down, essentially, in an energetic sense, mainstream media, then consider becoming one of our field messengers. And to do that, you just have to share what's going on in your community. And we have a whole section on our website called Field Messengers, if you want to check that out. If you want to attend a field messenger meeting, we have those on the weekends, and we'll give out various tips on how to record, how to tell good stories, all this fun stuff. We are here to support you. And we've got some great stories this week. So we're kicking things off with Annette in British Columbia, which is part of Canada. And she is giving us a local update on those Canadian fires, which I know impacted a lot of us, including myself, here in the northeastern part of the United States, because, we did some stories, I think it was last week, of all that smoke coming down. But Annette's really in the thick of it up there in Canada. And she was talking about how there were volunteers that were there to support their community, which is amazing. She said shifting winds are an issue. We did show a map, I think it was last week, of all these little fires. They're calling them wildfires. But just because something is spreading like a wildfire doesn't mean it started as a wildfire, right? And, this is impacting a lot of people. And, a lot of people weren't able to travel. They're being told even now that they may have to evacuate, that they should have a go bag ready. The air quality isn't so great in Canada. We're not seeing that as much here in the States, at least where I am in Ohio right now. But it's still happening in Canada. And she says progress is being made, but things can change quickly. So obviously, let's really put a lot of good intention towards those fires being wrapped up in Canada and those people being safe. Raffaella from Germany talks about a heat wave that is going through her area. Very unusual. Temperatures are soaring above seasonal averages, and she just gives us an update on how it's impacting her world right now. She shot most of her stuff from her balcony of her home in Germany. And so field messenger reports don't have to be super elaborate, right? Just telling us what's going on and doing it from your balcony can work as a story. This is something that is having a severe impact on people in her area. So thank you for sharing that with us. Barun from India talks about Darjeeling, India. It is a beautiful place if you've ever been there. It is famous for its tea gardens and beautiful mountain views of the Himalayas. There's beautiful walking paths. I can't really give this story justice because you really got to see it, but we got to see a little piece of Darjeeling in this video, and it was absolutely beautiful. You can tell it's a very special place. All right, Emma out of Spain talks about roadworthiness. She helped a friend with a mandatory vehicle safety check that they have to have in Spain. And she goes through the process and how the inspection worked and how it was completed, all the paperwork and stuff that's needed. When I see stories like this, what I appreciate about them is that, we're going to have to rebuild our society. As these major pillars start to fall apart, we have to rely on one another. And the way we've always done things is not going to be the way we do things moving forward. So I appreciate stories like this so I can see the intention behind it. Okay, so we need to make sure that the cars that we have are good for the environment. This is how one country is doing it. Is it the best way to do it? Well, you got to figure that out for your own community, right? But that's how I look at these kind of stories, and it all turned out well for Emma and her friends, so that's good. All right, Paige out of France, and I think this is a news story. France. Paige has been to France several times. In fact, I think she just returned because she's part of the UNN team. She, I think, just returned from France. So I think this was a news story because we have several stories that she has done from France. And this was about the Arles Amphitheater in France. It was built in 90 AD. It was inspired by Rome's Colosseum, and it once held more than 20,000 people. Very interesting background here. Of course, they used to do gladiator fights there and chariot races, and they hosted events there for more than 4 centuries. One thing that Paige mentioned that I thought was really interesting is she said at one point they kind of gutted out the Colosseum and they turned it into housing, like a little settlement, and they put a bunch of homes and created a community inside of it. And then all that was cleared out by 1830, and they moved the people outside of the walls. And now all of this history, it's all preserved as part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which we're going to talk about a little bit later because we did a news story on what exactly it means to be part of UNESCO and their World Heritage Program. All right, Susan out of Denmark takes us to the Faroe Islands. It is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Oh, looks so peaceful. It is a Nordic archipelago known for its dramatic cliffs, rugged landscapes, and quiet little villages. You can hike there. You can do what looked like a little bit of I don't think it was a polar plunge. It wasn't that cold, but Susan loves to get in the water, and there was a sauna right there. So really just enjoying the beauty of everything as naturally as possible. You can ride horses, which she did, and just looked like a lot of fun. So she also says that this area has the first ever underwater roundabout. So you guys know what a roundabout is with cars, how it goes into a circle, and then you've got these different exits that you can go off of. And so I thought that was really interesting if you ever visit the Faroe Islands. Akira out of Japan takes us to the Jinkosai procession, and this is one of the largest and biggest traditional festivals in Tokyo. And he basically followed, it was a kind of parade of sorts, and they ended up at a sacred shrine, but they went through all of these different streets, and this is supposed to bring blessings to Tokyo. But there were people that were dressed up there from, I think he said, 1,000-year-old clothing, right, from, about 1,000 years ago. And they were diehards, guys, because a thunderstorm started, and that did not stop them. And this is a long procession. He said it was about 14 and a half miles, which takes about 9 hours to walk when you include all the short breaks. In New Jersey, we have a story from Amy, who experienced a bit of a power outage in her area because of a branch falling on a power line. And she tells us the whole story and exactly what happened. I think it impacted a neighbor of hers, and everything turned out okay. I think some people were without power for a little bit. And but yeah, you never know what's going to happen, right? And it's always interesting to see those people work. I always get so nervous for them when it comes to electricity, and they're up on those, machines, trying to fix power lines and cut down branches that are touching all of that. It makes me think, I know there's a better way to do electricity. Have you ever thought of that? Like looking up at the power lines, and sometimes they're humming, and I'm just like, gosh, that is so dangerous. When can we tap into this free energy that we know exists on our planet? And it's coming. I know it's coming. We have another story from Akira out of Japan. So June marks the start of Japan's rainy season, and they actually have a name for it. They call it Suyu. And this season is known for bringing about beautiful, lush greenery. Hydrangeas are in full bloom. And I have to laugh, you guys, because where I'm at right now, northeastern Ohio, my mom has all of these hydrangeas planted around the house. They're beautiful, beautiful flowers. But the deer around here, and we've got a lot, love to eat them. And so she's always talking about the deer eating her hydrangeas. So I'm hearing this constantly, and then we, see this report out of Japan about these beautiful hydrangeas, and I'm like, wow, they're everywhere. But did you know that they were once native to Japan? And then they kind of spread throughout the world because they're beautiful, right? And they're used in a lot of different places. Akira takes us to a temple right outside of this Migetsuin temple in Kamakura. And beautiful flowers outside. And you can see people just walking through and just really appreciating nature. Emma out of Spain talks about palm tree care in Fuerteventura, where she's at. And she talks about how she came together, her husband, perhaps some neighbors too. They had these palm trees that were outside of their home. And no one was really doing anything with them. And so she talks about the whole process of having people come out, work on the palm trees, and what that looks like, because you have to be very careful. You don't want to harm the palm trees. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen a palm tree that really needed some maintenance. You know, the ones that are kind of like alongside the road and don't really belong to anyone. And, it kind of makes me sad because I'm like, oh, you could be so beautiful, And that's essentially what Emma was trying to do. She was trying to make sure that the tree was healthy, that it was okay because it's super close to her house. So obviously you want to make sure there's nothing that can harm your home. And she talks about everything that's involved in making sure that palm trees are taken care of. Did you know that palm trees prefer sandy soil? I guess that makes sense, right? Because here in the U.S., the further south you go, the more you see the palm trees. And obviously you need to have nice weather too. But it makes sense as to why we think about them with beaches, because they love the sand. Who doesn't love the sand, right? Great for grounding. Here are some of the stories the team and I worked on for you guys this week, where we dive just a little bit deeper. We find some sound bites to support the information that we're finding about these stories. We're going to kick things off in St. Lucia because they are experiencing a water crisis right now. And it is the result of years of aging infrastructure, leaking pipelines, limited water storage, and changing rainfall patterns, which have left many residents without reliable running water for more than a decade. Nearly half of the island's treated water is lost before reaching customers, while dry conditions, neglected reservoirs, and underfunded repairs have made shortages even worse.
The island of St. Lucia is currently facing one of the worst water crises they have ever experienced throughout their history, and this is mainly because of aging water pipes which still haven't actually been fixed. And what is so concerning about this in particular is that right now in the Caribbean region, it is literally rainy season, and at this time in the year, it's abundant with rain. Well, it should be, but we are already seeing with the impacts of the climate crisis that they aren't getting as much rain, and also St. Lucia hasn't actually got a lot of the infrastructure it needs to provide the best possible water for their citizens in the country. And there's already organizations rushing into St. Lucia, such as the World Bank and Canada, but the only problem about this is that that is not a long-term solution. That's just a short-term solution. And what the St. Lucian government really needs to do is look at how in the next few years can they help to really improve the water systems across the island.
Now, this crisis has disrupted homes, farms, businesses, and tourism, prompting water rate increases to fund long overdue improvements, though officials acknowledge it will take years to rebuild a reliable water system. Some UK veterinarians are calling for tighter restrictions on common over-the-counter flea treatments containing fipronil and imidacloprid, arguing the chemicals may be harming wildlife after washing into the environment. They want to move away from routine monthly treatments for all pets and instead recommend using flea medications only when there is a clear need.
Topicals like this, the original insecticide, it was Advantage. The name of the drug, it's imidacloprid. And the second commonly found topical drug is fipronil, sold under the brand name Frontline. These topicals are really convenient, and when Advantage first came out, all you need to do is apply this topical once a month. You're going to control all your fleas. So they were able to test pet owners and find that pet owners were still having like topical imidacloprid, i.e. topical Advantage, on their hands 28 days after application on their dog or cat. You've applied this topical to your dog or cat. There's a little bit on your hands. You go wash your hands. What happens? That's going into the water system.
While many vets support rethinking current practices, others stress that parasite control remains essential for animal health, making the debate one of balancing effective pet care with protecting the environment. And we've definitely talked about parasites in the past, right? I'm totally convinced that most parasites are not natural to this planet. I would love to know where fleas come into play. Spain is facing a severe housing shortage, with demand exceeding supply by an estimated 750,000 homes, driving rents and home prices to record highs.
Begoña is a local in Palma de Mallorca, Spain, who can no longer afford to pay rent because the island is becoming more and more popular among foreign tourists. Palma is considered one of the most expensive cities in Spain and has experienced a popularity boom as a top tourist destination. The demand from foreign buyers, especially for luxury real estate, is also contributing to rising prices. In 2024, the prices on the Balearic Islands were the highest they've ever been and higher than anywhere else in Spain. Some locals have been forced to move out of the city and even off the island. Others pay around 600 euros a month for a basement room, and young people are forced to live with their parents.
In many cities, renters now spend 40 to 50% of their income on housing, while those in Madrid and Barcelona often pay more than 70%, forcing many to delay moving out, cutting back on essentials, or facing eviction. Although the government is proposing new measures to curb short-term rentals and improve affordability, most experts say the long-term solution is building significantly more housing to meet demand. Cuba's economic crisis has deepened in 2026 as fuel shortages, rising prices, frequent blackouts, and limited access to food and medicine have made daily life increasingly difficult for many residents. While the United States blames decades of government mismanagement and Cuba points to the U.S. embargo, ordinary Cubans continue to bear the burden, with many relying on financial support from relatives abroad just to get by.
It is in particular impacting Cuba's health sector, which was long a point of pride. The surgery wait list has grown. Infant mortality is rising.
Attempts to bring in humanitarian aid and food from places like Mexico is very slow. And when you have no gasoline to distribute those things on the island, it's also difficult to get those things into the hands of the people that need them. Really, it's the Cuban government that ends up with the fuel, with the goods.
In response, Cuba has introduced sweeping economic reforms aimed at expanding private businesses and attracting foreign investment. But it remains uncertain whether those changes will meaningfully improve everyday life. Cloning has evolved far from the lab, with applications in medicine, agriculture, conservation, and even pet and horse breeding. Have you heard of that? While scientists use cloning to preserve valuable genetics, study disease, and help protect endangered species, the technology also raises ethical concerns about animal welfare, genetic diversity, and the possibility, which we know is true but hard to verify, of human cloning.
I fully subscribe to the belief that we have the technology to clone humans and we've done it already. It's just not information that's available to the public. If we were already able to clone living, breathing organisms all the way back in 1996, what's to say technology hasn't progressed at all? Another thing I'd like to look at is Hollywood, who has had an eerily amount of people that look extremely similar. I mean, same face, jawline, facial features, and everything from generation to generation over and over and over again. A lot of people think that Hollywood is just being fed this clone pipeline, but a clone doesn't have a soul, and they'll never have the original essence of the person who the clone was made after. So what's the point of cloning celebrities? Well, although you'll never be able to control the mind of the original person, you can control their audience with a clone that looks exactly like them.
Although no verified human clone has ever been created, and there are many countries that prohibit reproductive human cloning, the ongoing debate centers on how to balance the scientific benefits of cloning with its potential risks and ethical challenges. And we know this all comes back to your intention behind it, right? Are you having positive intentions? Are you trying to help humanity, help organic life? Or are you trying to create new weird species and control humanity? Because that's what we're seeing behind the scenes, right? Many federal buildings across the U.S. are facing aging infrastructure, outdated systems, and a repair backlog estimated at around $50 billion as the government pushes employees back into those offices. They don't want them working from home anymore. Get back in the office. The problems include failing elevators, HVAC issues, plumbing concerns, and safety upgrades that have been delayed for years.
Throughout Louisville's Romano Mazzoli Federal Building, employees and visitors will notice out-of-order signs and painter's tape on the water fountains, as well as bottled water stacked nearby.
It's a good thing that we're doing this type of testing to see what's going on, especially post-COVID.
That's because the General Services Administration has been testing the water in thousands of federal buildings across the country this year for problems related to the COVID shutdowns. It's looking for unacceptable levels of lead, copper, E. coli, and Legionella, a bacteria that causes a type of pneumonia called Legionnaire's disease. All this testing started because of a 2022 audit that found water safety was compromised at several federal buildings.
While officials are looking to sell unused properties and invest in critical repairs, debates continue over how the government should balance maintaining existing buildings with funding high-profile new renovation projects, like that new ballroom that Trump keeps talking about. UNESCO World Heritage Sites are recognized as places of extraordinary cultural or natural importance. But the growing popularity of these destinations has created new challenges for local communities. While the designation helps protect historic landmarks and fragile ecosystems, some residents say increased tourism, conservation rules, and development restrictions have affected their daily lives.
UNESCO has recommended Venice be added to the list of World Heritage in danger as a litany of problems from over-tourism to climate change threaten to cause irreversible damage. The UN's cultural agency on Monday said Italian authorities needed to step up efforts to protect the fragile city, which draws millions of tourists every year. The recommendation comes despite Venice acting on a UNESCO request in 2021 to ban cruise ships over 25,000 tonnes from docking in the lagoon. The ban followed years of protests against big ships. However, continuing development, the impacts of climate change and mass tourism all threaten to cause irreversible changes to the universal value of the property.
From Venice's overcrowding to concerns over land use in Tanzania, the debate continues over how to preserve humanity's treasures without losing the communities that make them meaningful. Shein, the online site, has become one of the most controversial names in fast fashion as independent designers, artists, and major brands accuse the company of copying their work. Critics say Shein's data-driven business model allows it to quickly identify viral trends and reproduce designs at a speed that makes it difficult for creators to protect their intellectual property.
This is really frustrating and increasingly common with fast fashion retailers like Shein, Temu, AliExpress. They are deliberately infringing upon the intellectual property of usually independent fashion designers. They use AI to source the most popular goods in the marketplace and then go right to copying or infringing upon them, often because the law is not strong in fashion IP or people don't have proper protections in place at the time of infringement. People call it part of Shein's organizational DNA to infringe at this massive scale, and so there are a lot of lawsuits pending. Nothing has moved the needle with Shein. Here was an interesting case where they tried to charge them with racketeering under the RICO Act, saying that the copyright infringement was so large scale it constitutes racketeering. And you can see what they're doing. It's hard not to notice the infringement. These aren't exact replicas or counterfeits. They are knockoffs using cheaper materials and cutting corners.
While Shein says it removes infringing products when notified, ongoing lawsuits and complaints have fueled a larger debate over how technology, AI, and ultra-fast manufacturing are changing the future of creativity and copyright protection. Sri Lanka's Dansal tradition is a centuries-old practice of generosity where communities set up free food and supply stalls during Buddhist holidays, offering meals and necessities to anyone who passes by, regardless of their background. Rooted in the idea of selfless giving, the tradition has continued to evolve, with communities now providing items like drinking water, groceries, and even school supplies to meet modern needs.
Have you ever heard of a dansal? During Vesak and Pason, in Buddhist culture, a dansal is a beautiful act of generosity. It's when people set up free food and drink stalls and services to serve anyone passing by. No charge, no exceptions. It's rooted in the Buddhist teaching of dana, selfless giving. Dansals reflect a spirit of compassion and kindness. You'll find everything from rice and curry to ice cream and tea, all offered with a smile and an open heart. It's not about religion, it's about humanity. This Vesak, if you see a dansal, definitely wait online and stop by.
As Sri Lankan communities around the world carry dansal abroad, the custom remains a reminder of how simple acts of kindness can bring people together. So as I mentioned at the start of this episode, we do not have any sound bites from Kim. Kim Gogan is the head of the GIA, the Global Intelligence Agency, and she checks in with us about every 10 days to 2 weeks to update us on the status of things that are going on behind the scenes. We get the story behind those crazy headlines that you might be seeing on mainstream media, and really a guide as to how we're going to make this transition into a brighter, beautiful future. And, I know you guys are feeling these effects. They're coming in really strong right now as far as how your body may be reacting to things. We know that we are at war. We are at war, not even really with the deep state anymore, because those people really don't know what they're doing. But this is a battle of good versus evil. So we are taking down a matrix system that has been controlling humanity for a very, very long time. And if you're new to UNN and that sounds a little sci-fi, then stick with us and perhaps go back and listen to some previous reports, because we've been talking about this a while. It's a very real thing, and more and more people are waking up to it. I would encourage you guys, if you aren't already members, if you haven't signed up for a free trial, check out our website. We do have a new section on there in our chat section. We have a new chat that's specifically for GIA announcements and updates. That's what it's called. And Kim has been posting in there, and she tries to go in a few times a week to answer questions and also to just tell you guys a little bit about what's happening, even if it's not a full report. So you only have access to that, though, if you are either a member or you've signed up for a free trial. So I would encourage you guys to do that. And of course, when Kim does release her report, which will probably be out here soon, then she will post that in the chat. And that's an opportunity for you guys to comment and ask questions just on her latest video. So she's not going to go back and answer questions from previous videos. That would be really difficult to track. But for her most recent video, she will answer questions about that. So that's another way to learn more and to engage with Kim. All right, guys, I appreciate you checking in for today's episode of The Rundown. And again, check out our website, learn more about us. The website is unitednetwork.earth, and consider becoming a member. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.